Hey everyone, it's Melissa Malcolm. Wow, what a great response to the first video. Thank you for your questions and suggestions and for your time. And it was so awesome to hear that some of you forwarded it to all the managers in your organization. Thank you so much. That's what getting the employees you want is all about. Real, practical advice for transforming the employees you already have, most of them anyway, into the employees of your dreams. Managers need to tackle these small problems and concerns head on before they become bigger problems. And you'll discover when you're taking the time to make these small adjustments often, the conversations become easier. Easier for you and easier for the employees because they're no big deal. You're just reminding them of your expectations. But even better, the other employees take notice. Oh, my boss isn't accepting slacking off at work anymore. That is awesome because I wasn't even sure he noticed I was sitting over here working hard. The whole energy of your business will begin to change. I want you to own the business of your dreams, and that means that you have to work toward having the employees of your dreams. So who am I? I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Georgia and practice business law and employment law. And entrepreneurs call me all the time when they have an HR crisis on their hands, or when they see an HR crisis on the horizon and want to prevent it from becoming a huge problem that keeps them awake at night. In the last video, I talked to you about what to do with employees who waste time at work. And this time, we're going to talk about how to handle those attitude problems that you get sometimes. So, let's talk about your employee who works with the attitude of, you're not the boss of me. It is easy to get into this cycle. The employee might say, that's not my job, or why can't my coworker do it, in front of a bunch of other people. And then you don't want to escalate the situation into a shouting match, or you're so surprised to hear them say that you aren't prepared to address it on the spot. Before you know it, this employee is making a lot of comments like that, and you know that it has to stop. It would be great if we were all perfect and we could handle these as they come along. However, we're not. I know I'm not. So sometimes these situations get out of control before we address them. Other times we might set the expectation for the employee that they put into those comments and bring their concerns to us privately, but then they do the opposite of what we asked. So, however you get to this point, here is our situation for the day. Imagine that you're holding your weekly staff meeting and you're reminding everyone to turn in their driver logs on time or complete their medical records on time or whatever applies in your business. When you start discussing that, you hear this "it's not my job" employee sigh very loudly. And then push back from the table, stomp her feet, leave the staff meeting, and slam the door. Now what? Well, first you have to finish the staff meeting, and then you have to discipline the employee. It's time to move to true discipline, the kind that goes in the employee's personnel file. Notice I didn't say set the expectation that employees not storm out of staff meetings. So, here's our example of a written verbal warning. I always want you to write your verbal warnings down. Using the word verbal takes some of the heat from just handing the employee a written warning as their first level of formal discipline. Dear employee, on this date, you engaged in behavior that's not acceptable. I expect you to bring your concerns to me privately and respectfully. We can have disagreements, but we're not going to behave like children. Future behavior like this will result in more discipline, up to and including termination. Then give the employee a place to acknowledge that she received this, though she can't deny it, and give her an opportunity to respond to the verbal warning that you've given her. Now, I have this posted up here that says, don't write this. What is that? I don't want you to write that you had a bad attitude. That is way too subjective. It is much more important to focus on what you actually saw and heard and not what you imagined was in the employee's mind. Compare and contrast. This is how I'd like for you to write it. Notice how in your written formal discipline, you use the words to describe what actually happened. Rolled eyes, you stomped your feet, you slammed the door on your way out. This takes out your opinion. It's no longer your opinion, it's objective fact that would lead a jury or an investigator to believe down the road that she really did have a bad attitude that day, and no one has to get inside her head. So imagine if you had just written bad attitude, what would happen when you had to defend that in court or in a deposition? The attorney on the other side might ask you, Mr. Manager, now your executive assistant testified earlier that she always tried her best to get along with you, but you were never happy no matter what she did. I see on this day you wrote her up for having a bad attitude. Weren't you just out to get her? Isn't her bad attitude just your opinion? At that point, in a deposition, in court, you are under pressure to describe what you meant a year ago when you said bad attitude. Now, do you see how this factual description of what she actually did is much more precise? And it's not your opinion, it's fact. Plus, if you use this type of detail and she doesn't respond in writing, then it's like she's admitted it, even if she lies about what she did later. But what if she does want to write a response? Then let her. Take it, whatever it is. Probably she will tell you all of the things that you were doing wrong that should excuse her behavior, but that doesn't matter. She won't likely actually deny these allegations. And remember, if you use this detail and she doesn't deny it, it's just like she's admitted that she did it. Now, there are two more things that I want you to do when you have an attitude problem and you're disciplining for it. We don't have time to cover them in great detail, but first I want you to remember to thank the employee. Thank this employee wholeheartedly and sincerely for something he or she does well. There has to be something. Think about it when you go home that night and be prepared to do it the next day. The employee needs to know that you will move past their bad behavior. Not forget it, it's going to stay in the file, but the business owner has to show that he will work with the employee without holding a grudge. If you act childish when she gives you the cold shoulder the next morning or the next week, then your employees are also going to act childish. Number two, I want you to invite feedback from the employee as to what was really going on when the behavior occurred. So maybe that becomes part of a written response, but maybe it's not. All I want you to do is ask, hey, when that happened the other day, it made me wonder if there's something else going on that I really need to know about in my business. That answer could be anything. You might find yourself explaining the reason behind the policy or procedure, and you might also find yourself explaining that you don't plan to change that policy or procedure anytime in the foreseeable future. That's fine. You might also learn, when you invite this feedback, that the employee and you just have some misunderstanding. If you don't ask for the feedback, you'll never have the opportunity to correct it. And it can be a misunderstanding that's been creating resentment not just for this employee, but for a lot of your employees for quite some time. Or when you ask for feedback, you might learn that your employee has a very real and legitimate concern and just went about it the wrong way. You need to find out what that is and correct it. Take steps to correct it. Without taking these two extra steps of thanking the employee and inviting feedback, then often your employees will decide it's just not worth trying anymore because you are never going to be happy with them or you don't care about their success. Now, having said all of this, Some of you may be sitting there feeling a little bit overwhelmed because you have so many employee issues you don't know where to start. And we'll talk about that a little next time. Or maybe you're hesitant to start down this path of formal discipline because you don't want the backlash. Well, if you only have 2 or 3 issues, then it's better to start now before there are 5 or 6 problems to tackle. Or maybe you don't want to discipline someone because you heard after you hired him that he sued his last employer for discrimination. Now, in that case, maybe you do want to call a lawyer. Be sure you have your documentation in line. But in the next video, I'm going to remove some of the mystery around what is and what isn't discrimination. I seem to be getting a lot of questions on the emails about how to handle employees who are gossiping about each other or engaging in other behaviors that just really bring down morale in your organization. So we're going to talk about discrimination in the context of handling that employee gossip. Again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Feel free to forward this to a friend. Hit that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you have a question you really want answered, shoot me an email. You might see it answered in a future video. Email me at questions@melissamalcolm.com. Just remember I spell Malcolm funny. So until next time, I'm Melissa Malcolm, coaching you to get the employees that you want.